If you've ever gone out to your chicken coop and thought, oh my goodness, what is happening here? Have my chickens been having a pillow fight all night? Or if your usually fluffy, beautiful, shiny hen is looking a bit bedraggled, well, you are experiencing the molt in your chicken flock. So today we're going to jump in, we're going to look at what is molting, why does it happen, and what you can do to support your flock through this natural process. If you're new to keeping chickens, you might not have experienced your chickens molting before, and it can be quite shocking when they start this process. So what is molting? Well, molting is when your chickens will lose their feathers and grow new ones. So it is a natural seasonal process that happens every year, usually in the autumn, going in towards the winter. So that is totally natural. Your chickens are going to do it every year, and they're going to look quite bedraggled while they're doing it. The reason why chickens and all birds need to molt is because they need to replace their feathers. So over time, their feathers get damaged, they get old, they can't serve their function as well as they could when they were new. So chickens need to lose their feathers and grow new ones so they have healthy, vibrant new feathers that are able to provide them with all the protection that feathers do, so protection from the rain and the wind, from temperature shifts, and just generally keeping them looking fabulous. Let's have a look at some of the processes, the science behind molting. What triggers molting to happen, at least for your adult birds doing their yearly molt, is the day length. So as the day length shortens, your chickens are getting less daylight, and that triggers their body, triggers their brain to change up their hormones to move away from reproduction, so laying eggs, and into a feather replacement little phase. So as your chickens enter the molt, as the day length gets shorter, they're going to stop laying eggs or not lay as many, and they're going to turn that energy into replacing their feathers instead. So it's quite uncommon for molting hens to be laying very much. Mine usually completely shut up shop while they're going through this process. Some of the breeds that are bred heavily for egg laying might keep going during this time, but generally it's my preference to not try and have them laying eggs during this phase, because it's really, really energy and protein intensive on their bodies. The molting process usually begins at the head and the neck area of the chicken and then works its way down the body, finishing with tail and wing feathers. So your birds can look very interesting while this is all going on. And thyroid hormones are the hormone that regulates this process. So thyroid hormones in your chickens regulate the metabolism, and they regulate the areas and the timing of the feather loss and replacement. So it is really important that we support our chickens through this process so they can keep it on track, so to speak. Feathers are made out of keratin, which is the same protein that makes up your fingernails and your hair, although feathers are quite a bit more complicated than fingernails and hair. And this is a great time to pick a feather up that has been lost, particularly a wing feather or a tail feather, to really have a look at what the feather looks like and how it's made, because they're incredibly complex and beautiful structures that work so brilliantly to keep birds well clothed. How does molting work in terms of timing? Well, like I've already said, adult, fully mature chickens will molt every year, usually in the autumn time. Now, when you've got a young hen, a pullet, so that is a hen in her first year of laying, she will usually wait for about 18 months before she has her first full adult molt. And that will depend on what time of the year she was hatched. But if we assume that she was hatched in the springtime, she will grow up, she'll lay until it gets around to that about autumn time, and then she'll have her first adult molt. So usually 18 months is the time for the first adult molt for pullets, and also for cockerels as they're going towards being mature roosters, because they got to click in to that timing of the season to get in sync with the rest of the flock. And that's usually considered the end of the first season of laying. Once the pullet has gone into her first full adult molt, that's her first season of laying finished. And after she comes back to laying, that's her second season. That's how I look at it anyway in my flock. Then you've got your chicks. So chicks molt quite often. First of all, they get rid of their little chick down and grow in their juvenile feathers, which are like mini versions of adult feathers. And then as they grow, they're going to be losing those juvenile feathers and growing in their adult feathers. But it's usually not that dramatic when you're looking at chicks molting. It's not really like an adult process where suddenly they look bedraggled and terrible and then they grow in all their feathers. They're just constantly losing and replacing feathers as they grow, so it's not really that jarring as they grow up, except for when they're growing in their juvenile feathers from their chick down stage, when they look pretty incredibly hilarious. At least I think they do. And different breeds will lose feathers at a faster or shorter rate. It just depends. Like in my flock, my barred rocks seem to just be super drama queens when it comes to molting. They lose heaps of feathers all at once, look terrible, but then grow them back relatively quickly. Whereas the other birds in my flock do go about it a little bit more dignified. They lose some feathers, grow them in, lose some more, grow them back. So it really is quite an individual thing and can be a breed-based thing as well. The other situation that can cause molting in your chicken flocks is if you have a hen that's gone broody and if she is sitting on eggs for a period of time, so that she's going to hatch some chicks, so she's sitting for 21 days, maybe a bit longer if you were waiting to add eggs, or if you just haven't taken her to the broody breaking pen and sorted her out. So if she's been sitting for any longer than sort of a few days, she's going to have a broody molt once she isn't broody anymore. And that is caused for different reasons than the standard adult molt. It is a stress response. So when a hen goes broody, her hormones change, her metabolism changes, so she is not taking care of herself the way that she should. She's going to be sitting very still. Her feathers are going to be getting damaged from how much sitting she's doing in the nest and them getting rubbed into the bedding material and things like that. So there's some feather damage, and she's also not taking care of herself. She's eating hardly anything. She's not drinking very much. She's just focused on sitting on those eggs. And that is very stressful on her body. She might lose 20 to 30% of her body weight while she's sitting. And that is one of the reasons why I break my broody hens, because it is a very stressful process on their bodies, unless they're going to be hatching chicks, of course. So once they're finished, once they've hatched their chicks, they've come out, they've got their chicks, they're running around, or you've broken them, their body will switch. It will go back into, oh, we're not sitting on eggs mode. Their metabolism will come back up again, and they will have a broody hen molt. In my flock, I generally don't see that as being super dramatic. Once the chicks are a couple of weeks old, the hen will just start to look a little bit tattered. She will just sort of slowly lose and replace her feathers over time. In some instances, for other people, they notice a really dramatic broody molt, which can be quite severe, and like suddenly all the feathers are gone and they're all coming back in at once. So your mileage may vary, but don't be surprised if your hen loses lots of her feathers and starts to look quite bedraggled after she's been sitting on eggs. Let's talk about how you're going to support your chicken flock through their molt. So first, and the main thing that you can do to support them is to make sure that they have what they need in their diet. So replacing feathers is a hugely energy and protein hungry process. The keratin that is making those feathers, it is a protein. So it is made up of amino acids, and your chickens absolutely have to get that protein in their diet so that they can make their molt as quickly and efficiently as possible. So from that perspective, I encourage everyone to be feeding a high protein feed, so a feed that's at least 20 to 24% protein, and that has complete protein in it, which generally means an animal-based protein. What I do is I just add extra protein to the food I already use by using blood and bone meal added in. But you can do it however you want. You can go and buy a high protein feed that's all encompassing in the bag, but it's really important that it is a complete protein, because the amino acids that make up the keratin protein are methionine and cysteine, and they need to come from those animal-based proteins predominantly. So you want to give something like the blood and bone meal, meat and bone meal, fish meal, insect meal, or just actually meat scraps or tins of fish if that's what you want to feed your chickens, if that's in your budget. But protein is the thing that builds feathers, so you need to make sure your chickens are getting it in their diet. And they also need energy, so calories. So generally, they don't need as many calories when they're not going through this super intensive process. But when they're molting, I find that they actually don't want to eat as much. So what I try to do is increase the energy density of their diet, so they're getting more energy for the same amount of feed, because otherwise they sort of just pick at their food. They're not that into it. So I add in the extra protein, and I give them things like maize, corn, because that's really energy dense and they can eat it, and then they can wander away to be miserable under a tree and whine about how they've lost all their feathers, because they are quite miserable while they're molting. So rather than just feeding them the same feed all year round, I shift and change it depending on what is going on for my flock at the time. And I find the easiest way to do that is to keep some of those components separate. So I can go and buy a bag of corn to just add into their food, and I can have the meat and bone meal to just add into their food to adjust it accordingly. When we're talking about the Broody Hen molt, that's actually a really easy one to support nutritionally, because the food that chicks need is exactly the same as the food that molting hens and roosters need. So the mama hen is going to be well served just by the chick starter or whatever high protein, high energy feed you're using to feed your chicks with. So that's an easy one to tick off. You don't have to think too hard about that. Just feed mama hen and the chicks the same and she will do just fine. Molting usually takes between 6 and 12 weeks. It's quite an individual process, but you can help it along by the nutritional management, by helping your chickens out as much as you can. But yeah, 6 to 12 weeks. If it takes much longer than that, you might need to really step in with nutritional management. But every chicken is going to be a little bit individual about how they go about molting. Some are fast, some are slow, some are dramatic and lose lots of feathers at once. Some are slow about just losing little patches at a time. So it's really quite interesting. Like I mentioned, my barred rocks just go all in on the molting, drop heaps of feathers, look terrible, but then come through, and my other chickens just tick along, losing some feathers here and there. But what you will see is you'll see the pin feathers start to come through in these sort of bald patches, and those are the beginnings of the feathers coming through. They're going to keep growing through and turn into a beautiful new feather, but they look like just a little waxy small straw poking through on your chicken's skin. So you'll see those coming in and you'll know, okay, the new feathers are coming, everything's going the way it should be going. Usually your whole flock, within reason, will molt at approximately the same time. Some will be faster, some will be slower, but they'll all sort of go through it at roughly the same time period. And while they are molting, they are going to be grumpy and miserable and cranky and generally just not happy about the world. It's mostly noticeable with the roosters. I mean, the hens are not having a great time either, but the roosters really get hit hard by molting. They lose their tail feathers. I think it's a bit of a blow to their ego. So when my roosters are molting, they are much, much quieter. They don't crow very much at all. They don't crow in the daytime very often. Their morning crowing is sort of like just a habit, just because they have to. Their heart is not in it. They really, really get miserable. They get cranky with the hens. They get a lot more selfish. They chase other birds away from the food, and they just generally lay about being miserable and not being that interested in doing very much at all. But then the feathers come back and they kind of get a whole new leaf on life and are back to their usual roostery selves, crowing and mucking about and generally being happy. So they will not be super happy. Don't worry, they are not sick. Nothing is wrong. They're just going through a process that is very stressful on their bodies, and they just get a little bit cranky about it, just like we would too if we were having to regrow so many feathers if we had feathers. So that is everything you need to know about molting to support your flock to get through it quickly and without too much drama. Be patient. It is a natural process. It is going to happen every single year. So just roll with it and enjoy those beautiful, beautiful chickens when they all come through with their beautiful, fresh new feathers.